Today, as the time for Suhoor approaches, most of us ask the same question. What should we eat for Suhoor? In order to stay focused at work or school throughout the day and preserve our energy, we try to eat the right foods in sufficient amounts. To avoid feeling hunger and thirst for most of the day, we almost turn ourselves into storage units. Of course, this situation changes toward the end of Ramadan. On those days, setting a proper Suhoor table, let alone eating well, can gradually become exhausting. But have you ever wondered how people answered this question 1,500 years ago, at a time when Suhoor was still taking shape? Or more precisely, did such a question even exist at all? Let's examine this together today. First, it must be said that in the earliest Ramadans, Suhoor was not a freely available meal in the way we understand it today. When fasting was first made obligatory, anyone who fell asleep after the night prayer could no longer eat or drink until dawn. In other words, the moment a person fell asleep in the evening, they lost the right to have Suhoor. How difficult this ruling was became clear through a real incident. One day, Qais ibn Surma from the Ansar returned home in the evening after working all day. He was extremely exhausted and fell asleep before eating his meal. The night passed, morning came, and when he woke up, he was very hungry, but he could no longer eat. Despite this, he tried to continue fasting. As the day went on, his condition worsened, and according to reports, he eventually fainted. This situation reached the Prophet Muhammad. Thereupon, Allah revealed verse 187 of Surah Al-Baqarah, and the ruling regarding Suhoor was eased. Eat and drink until the white thread of dawn becomes distinct to you from the black thread. Around the same time, the Prophet encouraged Suhoor with these words, "Have Suhoor, for indeed there is blessing in Suhoor." With this revelation, Suhoor became a great ease for the Muslim community. At the same time, this moment marked the first turning point that truly raised the question of what should be eaten at Suhoor. However, within the desert climate of the Arabian Peninsula, where resources were extremely limited, Suhoor tables were nothing like the rich and varied spreads of today. In fact, it would not be an exaggeration to say that the conditions were quite harsh. In the 7th century, the centerpiece of Suhoor was dates. Dates were the most accessible and durable food in the region. Even so, they were not consumed in large quantities throughout the night. Many Suhoors consisted of only a few dates. Sometimes, Suhoor was nothing more than dates alone, and this was not considered a deficiency, because the goal was not to be full, but to prepare consciously for the fast. The Prophet did not encourage excess at Suhoor, rather, he taught contentment with little. Perhaps the most important element of Suhoor was water. Even today, we observe that many people focus more on drinking than eating at Suhoor. This is because what truly exhausts a person is not hunger, but thirst. For a society living in a desert climate, this reality was even more pronounced. The thirst that would last throughout the day was the most difficult aspect of fasting. Therefore, drinking water at Suhoor was not a simple habit. It was a vital preparation. For this reason, some companions would perform Suhoor with nothing but water on nights when they could find no food. Those with slightly better means might have had additional items alongside water and dates. If there was bread in the house, it was usually barley bread, hard, stale, and nothing like the soft bread we know today. Yet having it at Suhoor was considered a great blessing. If olive oil or vinegar was available, that too was a significant provision for that household. Still, Suhoor was generally very simple. The aim was not to fill the stomach, but to gain enough strength to carry the day. Products like milk and yogurt were not available in every home. They were possible for those who owned animals, but not on a regular basis. For this reason, they were not staples of the Suhoor table, but occasional blessings. Even so, having any extra food on the table under those conditions was a reason for gratitude. The earliest Suhoors in the Arabian Peninsula were eaten close to the end of the night. The Prophet preferred that Suhoor be performed near the time of Imsak. The companions would eat Suhoor with only a short interval remaining before the dawn prayer. Thus, the day would begin with Suhoor, followed immediately by the morning prayer. The first Suhoors were generally quiet. They were eaten in the darkness of the night, by the dim light of an oil lamp. There was no display, no long conversations. Suhoor was brief, and once the time arrived, everything was cleared away. It was a short but meaningful pause, a moment when a person stood alone with themselves, preparing for the hardships of the coming day. All of this clearly shows how our understanding of Suhoor has changed over time. While today we think among dozens of options about what to eat for Suhoor, 1,500 years ago, Muslims did not even have the guaranteed right to wake up for it. For the ease that allows us to rise for Suhoor today, no amount of prayer for those before us would be enough. And among all the things that have changed over the last 1500 years, one of the few that has remained the same is the fundamental question that Suhoor asks: how much control will you have over your own self today?